While Matthew was fixing his dream car in the garage, his son Tony burst in, looking scared. Tony said he had found a hidden truck on their property and that something scary was inside. Matthew could tell his son was really frightened because Tony was struggling to talk. Matthew decided to check if his son was telling the truth. He had no idea that what they would find in that truck would change everything for him. But before we dive into the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and tap the notification bell so you won't miss any updates. Because Matthew's property was huge, it took them a while to reach the truck. After walking for about an hour, Matthew started to think maybe they should have used the quiet bike, but by then it was too late. They were almost there. Tony said they were just a few minutes away. As they got closer, Matthew noticed strange markings on the trees that he had never seen before. Things were starting to get weird, and Matthew began to wonder if Tony was right after all. As they neared the truck, they saw a lot of trash scattered on the side of the road, and the truck itself was covered with a net. It was clearly hidden on purpose. Matthew guessed there must have been a reason for that, and he was about to find out. When he removed the net, there it was, a truck, hidden in the middle of his property. Matthew couldn't believe what he was seeing. There were no roads or paths nearby, so how did this truck even get here? Matthew said to Tony, "Stay here, son. I'm going to check inside the truck." But Matthew was suddenly startled by a loud bang, and when he looked back, he saw Tony running away in fear. Matthew realized that Tony might already know what was in the truck because he was so terrified. Matthew paused for a moment, taking in the situation so he would know where to return. He quickly took off after his son. After running for just a minute, Matthew was already out of breath and called for Tony to stop. When he caught up, he hugged Tony and calmed him down. Matthew asked what Tony had seen in the truck, but Tony couldn't answer clearly. They decided to head back to the truck together. As they approached the truck, Matthew stayed cautious, remembering the loud bang from earlier. When he opened the door, a horrible smell hit him, and inside he saw a skeleton holding a box. The letter on it read, "Never open this box. It will bring the world into great danger." Though Matthew was creeped out, a voice in his head urged him to open it. Questions raced through his mind. Why was the skeleton guarding the box? He decided to leave the skeleton for now, planning to call the police the next day, but first, he wanted to investigate. As it was getting late, he told Tony they should head home. He noticed Tony was still shaken by the sight of the skeleton, which was understandable for an 8-year-old. They finally made it home, and Matthew immediately told his wife Hannah what had happened in the middle of the forest. Hannah listened carefully, then looked him in the eye and said, "You're kidding me, right?" Matthew quickly replied, "No," and went to grab the box to show her. Hannah was startled when she saw the box with the terrifying letter on it. Matthew explained that he wanted to open the box himself, but Hannah instantly refused and demanded that he call the police immediately. Matthew disagreed with his wife's decision, arguing that there might be something valuable inside the box. But Hannah insisted that they didn't know what was in it, and that it could be something very dangerous given the note. The next morning, Matthew woke up early, too excited to finally open the box. He believed it might contain something extremely valuable that could make the family rich. He went to the garage to retrieve the box, but to his surprise, it wasn't there. Matthew started searching frantically, turning the entire garage upside down. He was sure he had left it there the night before. After searching for an hour with no luck, Matthew suddenly remembered that Hannah had strongly forbidden him from opening the box. He hurried to Hannah and asked her where she had taken it. Hannah calmly replied that she had called her father, and he had also insisted that they give it to the police. So, Hannah had taken the box to the police station. Matthew was furious. "How could you do this?" he shouted. "I'm going to get it back." When Matthew arrived at the police station, he was shocked to see not just one, but 6 police cars outside. As he approached, everything took a horrible turn. The police surrounded him with their cars, leaving him no escape. Suddenly, the doors of the police cars swung open, and 2 officers jumped out of each car, making a total of 12 officers. They rushed toward Matthew, and one of them said, "You are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." On the way to the police station, Matthew tried repeatedly to question the officers about the box, but he received no answers. He was left in silence, but inside his head, his thoughts raced. Everyone seemed to know what was going on except him. Once at the police station, Matthew was thrown into a dirty cell, alone. An officer told him, "You'll have to wait here for a while. We'll get you for questioning in an hour." Matthew was in shock, unable to believe that he had ended up in a cell. After an hour of waiting, an officer finally came to take him for questioning. Inside the interrogation room, the officers treated Matthew like a criminal. He didn't know how to respond to their aggressive demeanor, and it seemed like they were convinced he was going to jail for a long time. In the first few minutes, Matthew pondered how to respond. He knew that anything he said could be used against him. A police officer constantly shouted at him, "Where did you get that box? That box is centuries old and contains a lot of danger." Matthew wasn't particularly interested in the policeman's words. His mind was preoccupied with what might be inside that box. Had they already opened it? The officers sensed that Matthew didn't seem to care about the situation. almost as if he were indirectly confessing. Matthew offered the officers permission to search his property so they could find the hidden truck. This way, his story could be verified, and the officers would know he was telling the truth. The officers agreed to this, and Matthew was returned to his cell. Back in his cell, Matthew couldn't stop wondering what might be in that box. He also worried whether the police had already opened it. He wanted to call Hannah more than ever to warn her about the police coming and maybe suggest she take Tony to her grandparents. Later, the police informed Matthew, "We'd arrived at an empty farm. We tried ringing the doorbell to check with your wife if it was okay, but no one was home. So we proceeded to the coordinates you provided and found the truck with a human skeleton inside." It was a shock for Matthew to hear they had found the skeleton. Deep down, he had hoped the bones would be fake. No one wants a dead body on their property. That could lead to a court case. But that wasn't the only thing on his mind. "Okay, officers, you saw the truck, right? You know I'm telling the truth. Am I still a suspect here?" Matthew asked. The officers replied that he was no longer a suspect. They saw the truck and the skeleton, confirming the mysterious chest came from that hidden truck. The officers then told Matthew they had already opened the box, which led to his arrest. But they couldn't tell him what was inside. No way, Matthew thought. He had to know what was in that box. He argued that he had the right to know since it was found on his property.
Before we begin, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more heartwarming stories.
The agents exchanged glances before agreeing to reveal the information under one condition. Matthew was eager to hear what the requirement was. He was asked to sign a document promising that everything would remain confidential. Matthew was told not to share the information with anyone. Matthew agreed, and the agents brought in the paperwork. After signing the contract, Matthew was finally going to learn what was in the box. The officers informed him that he would be allowed to see the contents with his own eyes. They led him to a special room and told him to wait while they fetched something. Matthew assumed they would bring him the box. However, when they returned, all wearing white hazmat suits, he was shocked. They handed him one as well and told him to put it on. After putting on the hazmat suit, they guided him to another door. Matthew carefully followed the officers into the room. One officer was already standing over the box, ready to open it. Matthew quickly made his way to the table with everyone else following. Once the officers and Matthew were gathered around the table, the officer slowly opened the box. Curious, Matthew opened his eyes again and saw an insect inside the box. It didn't look like any bug he had ever seen before, but how much harm could an insect like that do? "I can see you're confused," one of the officers said suddenly. "But this isn't just any insect, it's carrying several diseases, and if it got loose, it could cause a huge health crisis." Matthew gasped and quickly stepped back, bumping into an officer. He had seen enough and wanted to leave right away. A short time later, Matthew was released from jail. He rushed home and hugged his wife and son tightly. It took the police a few more days to clear out and tow the truck, but Matthew was glad to never be part of anything like this again.